Hey guys and girls, it's Blackjack with 396 Guitars. We have a brand new Mexican Stratocaster on the bench today. Good customer brought it in and wants me to check it out. We're going to evaluate it. We're going to see what's going on with it. He already has some concerns. I did some off-camera measurements and kind of preliminary checking it out, but I found a few things. Let's get to work. And remember, if you dig what I'm doing, like and subscribe. So, let's not make fun out loud of the color. We can always change that. So the first thing I did, as always, and refer to any video that I've ever made, is we check the neck relief, and believe it or not, right off the rack from the factory, the neck relief is pretty good. So I'm not too concerned about that right now. But I did tune it up right away. And, you know, when you check the neck relief, you go, okay, everything's cool there. You go, let's tune it up and see where we're at. And I haven't been able to get the guitar to stay in tune. And that's kind of one of the customer's complaints. Now, there's a couple of things that can cause that. And it does have a floating bridge on it, and we're going to use that. So it's important that we pay attention to how we're doing this setup as we go along, because a Stratocaster is a little bit different than a Tele. It's got a floating bridge on it, or as we affectionately refer to it as the whammy. Now it should come right back to pitch. And the low E went sharp. A stayed, D stayed, G stayed, B stayed, and high E stayed. Secondary complaint, or something that I noticed, the high E is kind of twangy. But we'll get to that. So, why would the E see, it went sharp again. Way sharp. Seems like everything's going sharp. So, what do? I pulled off the cover in the back, just to investigate, because, you know, on a Strat, you have to look at that, and you have to know what the hell is going on. And this is what we found. So, the first thing that we're going to notice is the claw. One screw is almost 2/3 of the way in, and the other screw is halfway out. That claw, these claw screws should be even. This should not be sideways like that. So, what it does is effectively change the spring tension on one side or the other, and that spring tension that's slacked off, the longer screw, happens to be on the low E side. And I'm going to assume that that's why we're not staying in tune there. So the first thing we're going to do is straighten these out. We're going to block it, stabilize the trim system on it. And I'm going to say that that's already, I know, is going to be too far in. So we're going to back them off a little bit, keeping them equal by eye. It doesn't have to be exact. You don't have to get out a measure. And what we're going to do is we're going to block the trim so that it can't move. Then we're going to set up the guitar and go back to getting the trim where it needs to be. And how do we block the trim? When I say block the trim, we use hardwood blocks. There's different sizes, and every guitar is going to be different how it's routed out, every style of guitar, brand of guitar, but I'm going to start with the thin one because I think that's the one we need. And they're stepped down on one side and smooth on the other. The smooth side goes towards the bridge, and you put, the idea is you're going to push it down in there. And what you're effectively doing is pushing all the spring tension off. And what you want to do is that right there. If if the camera can catch that, is get the bridge flat on the body. We just turned it into a hardtail. And we're going to leave it in a hardtail condition like this until I do all of the measurements and adjustments on the guitar. That includes neck relief, which is the bow in the neck that we need, a certain amount of it. It also includes the string height, and it includes intonation and pickup height. Okay, so all of that's going to take place before we put these screws back in and pull that block out. That block is going to stay in there throughout the setup process until we're ready to get it out of there. What we have effectively done is turn this and disconnected the trem system on it, if that makes any sense. So we are going to restring this guitar, so I am going to de-string it, and then we're going to put the new strings on. I'm going to do that off camera because right now I want to illustrate how we do the setup. So I want to get the new strings on it first, and I want to save a little bit of video time, so stand by. Okay, so we're all strung up. We're gonna double check all of our measurements, do our setup with the block in the back so that we have effectively disengaged the trem system. I still like where that's set. It might be slightly tight, but when I eyeball it and measure it, it looks and it measures good. I think we're going to leave that. The next thing is going to be my fat head in the camera, and we're going to check string height before I get to intonation. So, yeah, definitely a little low. Sorry if my head is in the way, is it? Probably a little bit. I'm going to bring them all up slightly as a baseline adjustment. And when they're low, when I say they're low, they're at right now at about just the high. The low E is the highest one, and it's barely reading just over 464. So I want them all to be 564s. There's another little tiny guy. All right, you want to play? You could try, but I know what size you are. So we know that they're all low. They're all around 464s. I'm going to give them all a half a turn on the, with the low E, I know is just above 464s. That one's getting a half a turn. Now there's two screws on each saddle, so the rest of them I know are even lower. So I'm going to give them a whole turn and try to, by the way, they're all wobbly and not straight at all. And you want your saddles to be level. You're going to get them level and bring them up to what I think, I'm going to guess at what I think is going to be 564s. So when you're adjusting your saddles, make sure you do them equally. If you turn one screw up or down, do the other one equally. That one's really crooked. That's probably why it's low. This one too. Not my favorite Fender style saddles, but they're okay. So we got them up there. Let's tune to pitch and double check our, see, we raised everything up so it went sharp. We're going to double check that again. Now if I have to continue to adjust these, I'm going to do it off camera because it can take some time, but we all know how to do this from my previous videos. We're trying to get equal all the way across the radius of the board. Yeah, they all went sharp, which they should have, because I effectively raised every one of them. I don't like the way that that high E is buzzing. We're going to address that soon. Let's measure. This little girl might put me through my paces. I always love it when I get a brand new guitar on the bench. Some of them are worse than others. 5. 5. A little bit low. So fine tuning. And again, tiny, tiny increments. Once you're fine tuning, just do 1/8 turns. Measure. I want to get to 5. Where did my thing go? This is what I want to do off camera, because this can be tedious and it can take time. 5. 5. 5. Yahtzee. It was just the one string was a little bit lower than the rest. Now, let's eyeball our saddles and make sure they're nice and level, which I can live with that. Maybe that guy right there, but I'm not going to get in a twist over it. We may need to readjust these later, because once we start doing the trim, that could affect our string height a little bit. All right. Tune it up to pitch. Check our intonation. And then we're going to start getting after that trim system. Actually, the high E started sounding better. Oop. No bueno. It's a little sharp. I like that one better. I didn't think so. Didn't think so. So, to reiterate, if you're checking your intonation and it's sharp, get to your tune to pitch. Right now we're checking the low E string. Get it tuned to pitch. So open, it's dead on at E440. Check your 12th fret harmonic. It should be dead on, and then fret the 12th. If it's sharp, the distance between the saddle and the nut is too short, and it is still slightly sharp. So we effectively have to lengthen that point, and you're going to do that. This you can do in two turns at a time. And then you start that whole process over again. Tune to pitch and check it. So, yeah, guess what's coming? Dead on. I'm going to do the rest of the intonation off camera, and then we'll get back and finish up the trim setup. Stand by. So, onward and upward. Intonation is all done. Actually, it was only the low E that was not responding, and usually from the factory that they get that always that one thing right, the intonation. I don't know why. Must be some magical measuring tool they have, but as it turned out, it was really only the low E that was out. And by the way, when we initially checked this one out, it was the low E that wouldn't stay in tune. It kept going sharp and then flat and then sharp and then flat. So something wasn't happening right there. So intonation is set. Neck relief we're going to stay with. I'm surprised I didn't have to adjust that, but I like it where it is. We're going to run with it. Pickup height, we're going to do that before we get after the trim. Not bad. Way low, way low, way low. Yeah. Can't have everything. And you know, pickup height is the most ignored adjustment. I've watched the best professionals ignore this adjustment, and it could be the most important thing in how your instrument sounds through the amplifier at the end of the day. 3/32 and 1/8. That's your measurements for that. And it's important. You just hold the last fret and check them all and move them up and down accordingly. Let's get to... Now, once you've done all of that, and we still have our block in there, in playing position, we are going to start to drive our spring claw screws in equally. 2 turns, 2 turns, 2 turns, 2 turns, until our block pops out easily. You follow? And this is the magical part of string and spring equilibrium. And it's important that you keep your spring claw even as you're turning them in. You don't want them one way out and one way in like it was when we started. No good. I'm kind of eyeballing them as I go along to make sure that they're even. And when our block pops out, it wants more. I think we're going to be getting close here. It's getting loose. I think one more turn each and it should pop out. This is always an aha moment. Yeah. We're going to have to retune. When that block comes out, you're going to have to retune and get back to where we were. And sometimes this requires some other adjustment. But what we're doing is we're pulling the string tension up on the saddle to see where we're going to land. And we want the saddle to be up slightly off the deck, and right now it is not. So we're going to have to back it off slightly. We might have had too big a block in it. And get the string tension to pull up on our saddle. I'm wondering if I should have used a smaller block. I think we're going to be good here pretty quickly. We can get these strings to pull up on our bridge. We should find equilibrium soon. Isn't this tedious? Yes, it is. Wait until you do a Floyd Rose. Yep, she's starting to pull up, but I want more. How anybody at the factory ever let that go with those spring claws uneven like that is beyond me. That's a new one. I haven't ever seen it before. I've seen them all out of adjustment, but never uneven that far. It was a ½ an inch uneven. Yahtzee. We've got maybe 2 millimeters off the deck, and that's where we want to be. Now we're going to start checking to see if we're going to stay in tune and find equilibrium. And again, this is brand new strings and brand new spring adjustments. This can go on for quite some time until they settle and find that equilibrium. But we should be pretty close. And then once you get it to do it a couple of times in a row where it stays in tune, you let it settle. And don't touch it for a few minutes. Strings and spring tension, they're a little bit odd. Sometimes they just want to be left alone. Yeah, I think we're going to be good. It's already starting to hone in. Staying flat a little bit, and that's our strings are stretching. And you may need to do this process several times. You tune it to pitch, you hit that whammy, and make sure you're not getting too high off the deck. It's almost dead on, which means the strings and the springs are starting to find equilibrium. It's barely a quarter of a cent off flat. Of course, the G made a liar out of me. Rotten kidding class. B almost didn't change at all. E stayed dead on. Dead on. Dead on. Whew. Sometimes I'm so good, I surprise my own damn self. We're going to pause quickly here and let it settle. When I come back, we're going to double check it again. And then we're going to play it and illustrate that it actually stays in tune when you hit that and dive down and let it go. So stand by. We'll be right back. Okay, we're back. Make sure my video is rolling. Yes, it is. So we let this settle for about 10-15 minutes, and it is definitely holding tune, which means we have found equilibrium. Our bridge is looking really nice. You want about 1/8 of an inch, give or take, off of the deck. If it's way up too high, you got too much string tension. If it's too low or against the deck of the guitar, you've got too much spring tension in the back. You have to find that equilibrium, and sometimes it takes a little tweaking. Normally, with a guitar like this, if it comes in and it's been played for a while, but this one was right off the rack, so I had to start from scratch. But I'm glad you were all able to see how we go through that process. You can now notice that our claw is perfectly even. It's not, one of them way forward and one of them way back. I don't know how it ever left the factory like that, but it explains a lot. We should be in tune. Dead on, low E. A, dead on. Dead on. Everything is hanging in to pitch. It's going right to pitch, and we're going to prove that by plugging into the amp now. And I love this is always the reveal moment, because the camera will pick this up, the microphone, and it's still the strings are still new, and they're gonna stretch a little bit, but once you get it to equilibrium like this, this guitar is going to be a nice little player. That chord still rings and resonates. It goes right back to pitch. I mean, any ear can hear that. That's what it's supposed to do. Normally, you wouldn't dive down that much. All you're doing with a trem is, and it should come right back into tune every time like that. It's a beautiful thing when it works out, and when, you know, once it's done like this, these strings are going to continue to stretch. So over tomorrow and the day after, the owner's going to take this guitar and he's going to tune it up a couple of times, but after a while, it should only need to be checked slightly. The strings will continue to stretch, but this guy is done, and I think it's a keeper. I'm going to tell him that he should keep it, and he should play it and enjoy it. It doesn't need anything else. Roasted maple neck, very stable. We're going to cut these off. This guitar is done. It's another success at 396 Guitars. Love your Stratocaster. If you dig what I'm doing, like and subscribe. We'll talk soon.